Great, thank you, Alan. So we'll start. Welcome everybody to Get Savvy's webinar today, whether it's your morning, afternoon, or indeed evening. This is AI in immersive learning, and this is creating high-value experiences to retain your members. Should say, if for any reason you've joined us from another industry, like essentially the charity sector, this is also relevant. So how do we use these immersive learning experiences to help elevate member engagement and retention? I'm Matt Dunphy. I'm a lead consultant in learning and development with Get Savvy. I am joined, as always, by my colleague, learning director, Alan Reid. Alan, do you want to say a quick hello?
Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. Alan Reid. I've been working with membership organisations and other not-for-profits on the learning field since the early 2000s, and I'm really excited about all of the things that we can now do very, very affordably using AI that used to cost a fortune. So, looking forward to talking about that.
Thank you, Alan. And we'll talk a little bit more about who we are and our services later in the webinar. This is a breezy session today. So before we begin, we do record these sessions. If you've not joined us before, no need to take pages of notes. You'll be able to revisit the webinar afterwards. As I said there, for anyone who joined us early, we have the Q&A function. Please do ask any questions as we go. We have a conversation-based section today. And of course, do like or upvote each other's comments as a form of interaction with us. And we offer a few free assets after this webinar. The one that I point you to is you get a 50% discount to our flagship e-learning course using AI, managing technology change projects for business people. Brilliant, brilliant course with a lot of AI features in, and you do get it with us for half price as a delegate here. So to talk about agenda, in a moment, we're going to talk about the critical issue of, how does immersive learning using AI features really help you retain your members? Or if you're in the charity sector, the learners you serve, your donors, supporters, or volunteers. Next, we'll have a conversation-based session between Alan and I about some of the key immersive learning features that you're suggesting we should discuss today in a poll. And we're going to use the format what, so what, now what, just to keep us honest and to make sure you get some good takeaways from those discussions. And we'll talk a little bit about our learning experience design services. This is particularly for anyone out there who really does need help at the moment, developing their content into something more dynamic. And you can ask questions as you go, but if we've got time, if there's any critical questions at the end before we stop, we will cover those. So as a form of introduction, then we've actually given a bit of an aid because we're moving quite fast today, which is, if you are in a hurry or you're like, what's the key message, Matt and Alan? It is this, if you're in the membership sector, you're in the charity sector today, we suggest through our research and experience that it's not that your content is bad, that it of itself, it's not valuable. It's probably that you are not doing enough for your members to freshen it up, to brighten it up, to make it more dynamic, and of course, to grow the amount of content you deliver. Immersive learning is a really key way that for your members, donors, supporters, you can actually elevate what you already have. And the good news is that AI features inside LMS and broader uses of AI in immersive learning in the learning setting are helping us accelerate what we do and actually make it more affordable, as Alan says. And just to summarize here, for us, this is your members, donors perceiving value over time. So really seeing what you do as valuable, over multiple years. So what I wanted to do is I'll cover this at a high level, but I think it's important for us to share things that are actually out there in the broader world, kind of frontier technology. We don't expect all of these to be in situ in the not-for-profit sector in the UK right now. However, that doesn't mean you're not starting to experiment with them or that they might not sort of come along in future. And as it suggests, I'll frame this session by saying we as adults, myself included, have a learning curve around some of these features. It's useful to know that our children and teenagers at home are actually already natives of some of these types of technology, whether it's for their learning or just their gaming experience. So I'll cover these. The first one on top there is sort of virtual reality. Many of us will have heard of that. Many of us, if we're learning professionals, will have explored what that is. But for me, this is a practice setting. It's allowing people to investigate their behavior, in a scenario, a virtual scenario, without needing to do that in the live environment. The one example I might say is if you're onboarding someone new and you have the ability to use this technology, it might be running customer service scenarios so that they can actually hone their opening skills without needing to do that with live customers. Mixed reality then is a mixture of the physical and the virtual environment. I think, for learning, the key point here is this is about remote collaboration. We now know that post-pandemic, can't always get people in the same room. And we know we often need to share things to experiment with them. So in mixed reality, the example would be, let's say you're in a product team, you've created a product which is virtually in front of you in this mixed reality environment. Everyone can quote unquote handle the product, give their feedback, make suggestions for its development. And that's without actually having to sit with a physical product around one table. So really exciting there in terms of mixed reality. You might also hear that link to augmented reality, AR. So if we talk then about virtual humans, a bit easier to grapple with. I'm sure many of you are starting to see AI representations of humans, whether that's presenters, tutors, even David Beckham, being rendered in AI format speaking to you. So the point here for learning is that we can actually use this to run conversation scenarios if we've got the access to this technology, and certainly Get Savvy already use this in our courses, whether it's text to voice or whether it's an AI tutor speaking to you to present and train out our content. Often a more economical option than doing a lot of video editing with real life humans, which I love, but it's just, do we have the budgets for that all the time? Digital twins, then, love this area. This is, say, if you're in manufacturing, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, maybe a high safety, high risk environment. You create a virtual model of the real environment using real data from that environment. And what that means is when we're learning, we can actually investigate risk in a different way. We can predict potential risks before they happen, accident black spots, and actually give that feedback to people in the physical environment. So you can imagine this is really in a large scale setting where there's a lot of safety risk around, but actually having a virtual model is really, really instructive, even to run scenarios, so that you can learn more about your physical space. And then the final one there, probably quite common as well, is wearables. Whether your son, daughter, or your spouse has asked you for a Whoop watch, or maybe you did experiment with Google Glasses. This is wearable technology which has a data link and feedback loop, which is actually telling you both about your biometrics, say, or about the physical surroundings. In learning, where I see this as valuable is this might become in the future a real wellness tool at work. Not to get big brother, but if we ourselves have metrics for our own stress levels, elevated heart rates when we're working, we have ways to modulate that quite quickly. So those are five kind of very far-reaching uses of immersive learning for AI. If anyone's a bit skeptical, I did find this from the International Journal for Research in Social Sciences, so probably a hub that is used to experimenting with new technology and its value in social terms. They looked at 21 studies last year, and they said that AR and VR is actually really effective at these areas of comprehension, the general understanding of learning, retention, and engagement. So my version of this is AR and VR is giving this a boost, in how we actually engage with learning and what we retain, what we take away. And so before we get into the conversation setting, we did want to ground this a little bit more. So there are 6 examples on screen, which we'll actually cover 3 of in more detail, Alan and I, and based on a poll we'll run in a second. But just to say, we expect these examples on screen to be certainly more in use in the nonprofit sector in the UK right now, and actually being themselves enhanced by AI features. And I should say, you see the visuals on screen. Get Savvy do use these features in our e-learning courses, many of them, and we do promote their use across our clients. So very quickly, scenario-based learning, we're probably all very familiar with that as learning professionals, or we've been through a scenario on an e-learning course ourselves as learners. So it's just being able to run certain situations and that your learners can actually exercise critical thinking against. AI is really helping just sort of augment the amount of scenarios we use or where we get them from. But we'll talk about more of that if it comes up in the next section. Live role play, I would suggest, is something that will remain quite human. We can use AI tutors to run role play scenarios, as I said in the previous section. But in terms of, you might actually be able to run a role play, whether it's for an interview or in the learning setting, to investigate how people are actually using AI at their desk, and to train them and to get their feedback on better ways of working. Action set learning or guided problem solving is probably similar. I would suggest if you've not got peer groups or little hubs or labs set up in your organization for problem solving, you should do that generally. But you might actually set a problem around AI adoption and talk to people about their ideas or the suggestions and some end goal for piloting AI use using action set learning. So their own development is catered for there, as well as actually solving a real life business problem. These last three, then, branching simulations or scenarios, it's kind of like invent your own story. If some of us are old enough to remember, there were those books where you could flick to different pages. So AI is helping us actually broaden what we do in this space so that you're a learner different to others. You might take a different pathway in a particular course or in a particular learner journey than others would. So it's simulating your own journey as you go. Storytelling and listening, again, I would say we never want to lose as humans. A lot of the World Economic Forum analyses out there right now is saying, human-based skills are as important as the new tech. But if we say, you might want to convert some of the stories you have as a membership body or a charity, say from text to voice, and you could offer that to your professional members, saying, here's some testimonial of people we work with or stories from even our staff. Listening's critical leadership tool. So again, you might use some of that functionality to actually just run some exercises to make sure people are not exercising bias, they're truly listening to colleagues, team members, or their line reports. And then finally, then just to say, we've got gamified learner journeys. So, again, this is a real core e-learning element. And what I would say is this has existed in tools like Storyboard and Articulate, Rise. It's being enhanced now by AI. So you've got quizzes that can be created using AI. You can get, card sort exercises that are spun up quickly by the system using your content. And it just makes a learner journey more dynamic. So that's one course or multiple courses in a program that you run. So there's a lot in there, but we suggest that these things are much more aligned to what you might be using or about to use in your LMS. And as I say, this is all technology that is supported by AI and used by Get Savvy all the time. So I think, Alan, just to pass to you, you're going to do a little piece on the actual value and engagement that we get in retaining members through this type of learning.
Absolutely. And when we're talking to organizations about what kind of content it's worth creating, what's the best bang for your buck, the question we're always asking is, what is it? Why does it matter for you as an organization, whether you're a membership organization or a charity? And what we find, and there's really significant research for this, is that immersive learning, where people can interact with the content, where it's not just watching a video or something passive, it really strengthens the two biggest drivers of why nonprofits exist, why they provide learning content at all. And that is to do with the value that you're perceived at and the level of engagement that you get from your stakeholders, members, supporters, etc. So, for instance, when we make a decision to put in a scenario-based element to the training, and therefore the learner is interactive, is engaging with that scenario. Or when we're putting in virtual humans, as Matt has described, it's that they get a vastly better perception of you as an organization providing it and the learning content. And research shows that actually, instead of it being a one and done passive thing, that they'll actually keep coming back to that content. They'll keep coming back to that piece of learning. So immersive learning creates value, but it also creates stickiness, and you get vastly more out of your catalog from doing that. A little bit of research that shows that CPD satisfaction levels go up when it's immersive and interactive. And essentially, people are far more likely to renew, to keep a hold of this contact and this content and keep coming back to it. Just a brief word about the reality, the commercial reality for most organizations providing learning. The fact is, any 14-year-old now can find pretty much everything that used to be provided by membership organizations and charities for free. There are vast resources out there that can provide most content that organizations provide. It's widely available. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you set yourself up as authoritative and a source that people want to keep coming back to, and in fact are prepared to pay for? And that goes to the heart then of the quality of what you're providing. So that you differentiate yourselves from these free options, so that it actually represents something that's going to help your members and your supporters do better in their careers in some cases, and really absorb and engage with the topic. So that's where immersive learning really makes a difference.
Thank you, Alan. I think we're going to run a poll now, which really is central to the next brief section. So we're going to share the six sort of areas of immersive learning. And really, we want to ask you, in your membership organization, your charity right now, it is multiple choice. Which of these do you think you can actually deploy to retain your members? What would they value, appreciate, for their engagement? And as Alan says, to actually make learning sticky in the organization a little more. So if you vote now, what we'll do then is we'll take the top three of these, and Alan and I will cover a little more detail about how they can be applied. So Alan, as always, I think you'll let us know when we've hit a good number of.
Yeah, really good engagement, and we're just going to give it 2-3 more seconds, and then I'll share the results. So Matt, I'll just hand over to you to comment on the results, which should be on screen.
Fantastic. And I should say, please do, we're always asking for additional comments. We've got a burst moment before we close today. So I'm probably going to say zero surprises here in the top one. I think scenario-based learning is a really good anchor, in terms of how we can do more with that. Everyone wants to apply theory to what they're doing in their lives and their jobs. So we'll talk about that in a moment. I think that's top choice, Alan. That might be over to you. Then we've got gamified learner journeys. It's probably another one that Alan will lead on. But again, if you've got an LMS, you run courses, of course, making them more gamified or dynamic is something we can cover next. And then thirdly, I think action set learning. Brilliant. This is one for me. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we can deploy guided problem solving in the AI setting. So thank you, everyone. I think, Alan, I'll just do a quick thing on the format of this, and then we'll get into it. It's probably about 3 or 4 minutes each, so we'll be breezy, but offer lots of insight. So you've given us the top 3 choices, and we'll talk about AI applications. And if you've got questions, we will scan the Q&A, and we'll see if we can cover those as we go. And then, Alan, as we know, it's what the features are that AI is introducing in this area of learning. So what? How will that help us retain members? Now what? What's a quick takeaway that the group can have about what they do next? So I think without further ado, we'll bring this down, but this is over to you to give us a bird's eye view of scenario-based learning with AI.
Fantastic. So let's start with the what. I'll keep it really brief because we're all learning professionals. But it's essentially putting your learner in a situation that they might experience in the real world, and then allowing them to engage with that so that they can learn it in a safe space. The what's changed with that? What has AI done to it? You've always been able to do scenarios-based learning, but it used to be horrifically expensive. It's like saying everyone used to be able to dine at the Ritz. It's all available to everyone, but it used to cost a fortune because doing all of the different variations of the scenario, all of the scripting, all of the things that could happen, different role plays, different people being involved, used to consume a lot of human time. Now with AI, moving to the third bit, what's the difference and what can you do now with AI? You can ask your AI authoring tool to look at your content and provide 30 scenario variations there that will apply to different learners depending on their journey into the scenario or what they've said. It becomes a bit more like Dungeons and Dragons, where people are putting things in, interacting, dragging and dropping, and then the scenario is responding, or one of the variations of the scenario is responding. I'm glad to see such a high response rate on this as people want to do it, because our research shows it's one of the things that learners enjoy the most and get the most out of, being able to simulate being in their job without doing any damage, if you like, and learning what it would be like in the real world.
And I think, Alan, just let's do a check on if there's any questions in Q&A, but I might sort of ask you to underline why you think, yeah, this actually helps retain members. The so what in here.
I think the so what element really comes down to how members respond to it, how much they value it, and learners in general. So they come out of that, and it sticks with them. They've been able to experiment with it. They've been able to have an interaction, if you like, as part of their professional life, but they've been able to do it in a scenario. So they really come back and score it very highly as part of their learning experience.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I know over the last 5 years for me since the pandemic, people are asking to have more application. They can learn concepts quite quickly, but it's actually the application, the relevance that really makes it sticky. Thank you. Let's talk then a little bit more about gamified learning journeys. This is probably something we could talk about for many, many hours. But again, give us the what, so what, and now what around this for membership organizations and charities.
So we've been doing this for years, but essentially it used to be something we would say you could have 10 minutes of this and you're learning, and it's going to cost this number of development days to create it. And now it's become really common. So what gamified learning is where you allow your learner to try different things. You put them in an environment where they're able to do different things, and they get different scores for the different things that they do. And of course, it takes a huge amount of variation and a huge amount of potential. They might potentially do this in these combinations. So that's where the AI really makes a huge difference. It can come up with all of the different gamified interactions, and then the different gamified responses to it, and of course the scoring and the feedback can be done in very short order. And what it's a combination, actually, we find, of testing the person's learning and allowing them to play with different things as part of the learning. And it comes second, actually, underneath scenario-based learning. Gamified learning becomes second in terms of getting the really, really high feedback from learners saying, I got a lot out of that. I want to come back to it. And people wanting to keep hold of the content and revisit it, next month and the month after, because they value the difference. AI has just simply dropped the price of that to 5%, I would say. I'm not even exaggerating. 5% of what it used to cost, you can now do it at these these very inexpensive rates, and it's routinely part of content that we're developing now, whereas it used to be the real exception.
And I think I'd add only that, I think we always talk about people get this experience elsewhere. I'm learning a language at the moment. I use Duolingo. There are other apps out there, but it's purely based on gamified experience points, which is a pull factor for learners. It's pulling you to the next stage, to the next experience. And I have seen some conservatism in the sector about kind of actually formally gamifying our learner journeys. I think it's really valuable. Just to check, Alan, any sort of thoughts in the chat about that? So maybe you could give us, exactly what people could do next around their gamified learning journeys. The now what?
I think there's a couple of points that have come up in the Q&A.
Great.
One of them is asking about people with special educational needs, and actually, this is one that's very dear to my heart. We're able to create content now that is multi-channel, far more supportive, far more flexible in how people can engage with it. We can have a lot more audible content, a lot more visual content, and a lot more different opportunities to engage with it at a variety of levels. So it's actually one of the most empowering things for people who want to engage with content differently and in a variety of ways. So that's a really positive thing for me. And then a question, I'll just fire this your way, Matt.
Yeah, sure.
The sound of my own voice. How can this approach accommodate contextualized learning, with a key word there on contextualized?
So again, I think if you look at the very sophisticated part of learner journeys and gamifying them, we might talk about branching simulations. So you might be able to create a context or context for your learners based on who they are within your learner journeys, within your courses. And then I think the AI features and what you develop around gamifying that can actually give them an experience in their context. So, it's not just one route for all, branching scenarios and actually gamifying certain elements, that link them to something that's more in their discipline. I think it all comes together for me. And we're seeing that a lot in the sector. We've seen, a lot of courses that are made in a very generalist way for all learners. And what Alan's just suggested and what the question suggests is we can now actually do more for the different audience learner types inside the technology. Hope that helps. I'm going to very quickly cover action set learning, and then we'll look to close with a few extra things for you. But just to say on this one, I've already said that peer group that you can get together of any problem solvers at any level in your organization is valuable. If people have done any formal learning, you can add an action set learning meeting, which is facilitated to that. And there are easy ways to learn how to do that if you don't yet have the capabilities. But I think where AI comes in, I've said probably there are two key examples. You can actually give people a problem which is AI based. How do we adopt AI technology in our processes or in this process area? And I think as well, a really key thing I was talking to a colleague about yesterday is you can actually bring AI into the room, you know, ask people to help solve a problem using your co-pilot or your protected use of generative AI. You're still going to exercise your human critical thinking, but you are getting the benefit of some problem solving from the machine, from generative AI tools. So what, I think this enriches what your people know and understand about your members or your donors so that they can be more effective. I'd say that's the main reason to kind of set action, set learning into an organization. And now what I really do believe is just a good organizational activity to get volunteers together who want to join a problem solving hub. And of course, more and more now the AI tools are available. If you're using Microsoft, everyone's got Copilot and they can ask it questions and prompts. So I hope that helps. I think I'll just check, Alan, is there any questions specifically that we've not covered?
I think if we just move, we'll tackle it right at the end, if we may, just in the
Yeah,
interest
sure.
of time. We're down to the last couple of minutes.
That's okay. And this will be a quick burst from everyone, but I would ask everyone to do this. In on your wish list, if time and budget were no factor, what area of your learning courses, your learning experiences that you run now, would you pick as your top priority for more immersive learning content and potentially AI features? So maybe if everyone can burst through their Q&A now with an answer, Alan, maybe you could just shout out some of the most popular things that have coming up.
Great. So got one saying, can gamified learning be produced in a tailored app for an organization in the same way, for instance, Duolingo is, or is it website based? I'll keep this really brief, but the answer is actually that anything you can do on the website now can also be turned into an app much more inexpensively than ever before, and it's the same code base and it's the same framing. So the answer is yes. You can also provide it within an app.
Wonderful. Any burst of comments of people just giving their suggestions about things that they might want to transform?
I think there's a really good theoretical question that's probably a longer conversation. How do we ensure that the translation of specialized topics are not lost because we're getting into scenarios, we're getting into gamification? It's really easy to kind of get so enthusiastic about the features that you end up losing the content, and I think that's really good, and that's part of where we as guides try really hard, and of course we're learning professionals on this call, try really hard not to do that, not to think, all right, we'll play with the toys and then the topic kind of gets lost behind it. So it's a really active area of learning content creation.
It might be a really good summary before we move on to close. Yeah, your content we trust, we trust how specialist it needs to be and what it is and where it is. This is all about enhancing the experience, as Alan says, and making the tech an ally, including AI. You can use it ethically as you need to, but it is an ally for this area. So very quickly, we do run a learning experience design service here. I think the key features you've heard today are it's very AI focused, using features in a more affordable way. And we do have an India-based team. So that really helps us maintain cost efficiency and effectiveness for you. And also, these are leading edge experts we use from India. And we also run fixed prices, which Alan will talk about. But all of this is to turn static, or dormant content into dynamic learning experiences, including using immersive learning techniques. So we kind of run three types of source material that we focus on, or three categories of material. We look at three areas or levels of development. And as I say, we do fix pricing ranges because we know that's important in the sector. You don't want that sense of runaway costs. And I'll just say very briefly, you'll be able to look at this later, or if you want to talk to us about it. We do have a four-stage process, which is very linear. It looks at auditing or discovering your content, working out what's valuable and what to prioritize, developing that in a sprint format, and then returning to continuous improvement on what you want to do next. So I think, Alan, potentially a word or two. I think delegates are going to get this, but this is sort of a very transparent view of our kind of our categories, levels, and pricing.
Absolutely. And the reason for putting this up, by the way, and it's startling for some organizations to actually put a number on screen, is because these costs of down the left, what different types of source materials we start with. It might be a webinar that you ran 2 years ago. It might be a static report. It might be a PowerPoint from a course you used to deliver in person, or it might be a new thought bubble of a course you want to create. And then going across to the right, different sophistication levels. The reason for putting this up here is actually that these costs are now something like 25% of what they used to be for any organization anywhere in as recently as 2022. And so all of these things now become within reach. Scenarios, gamification, virtual humans, they're all easily in reach for many organizations in a way that they just didn't used to be. So then let's just move on from there in the interest of
Sure.
time.
So we'll just move to this is our service offering, which again people can come back in touch with us if they
Exactly.
have
We'll
any
send you this. So
questions.
we are happy to advise. We advise from the whole kind of what should we do next? What's the best use of our money to finding an LMS from the marketplace to content creation. So we'll send you that. We can just move on from that really quickly, I think, Matt, and wrap up.
Perfect. I'll do a quick check on any final critical questions, and then I'll just let people know what's ahead for us. So get savvy that they can engage with. So, anything burning sort of in the Q&A, Alan, before I close?
I think there's a really good interaction of what people would love to do, and there's a sense of frustration of not getting the support from their own organization in some of these. But people would say they would create various roles in civil engineering jobs for students to train before they apply for jobs. I think that's a good one. Build a fake bridge before you build a real bridge, and then. Lots of stuff where people would build commercial AI roles so that people can engage before they engage in the real world. So scenario based and gamified is a large part of what people have responded, saying they'd like to be able to do.
Thank you, everyone. And look, keep the vision in mind. We have different scales in the not-for-profit to commercial sector, but we're sharing these ideas that you might be able to scale them to what you need and then work on your stakeholders to get investment and get some traction around resource. Fantastic. Well, look, I know probably many of you might be heading to meetings. So just to say, we'll share the recording after this session. We'll also share our research study from 2005, which is jam-packed with ideas about AI adoption as you get the discount to the course. And please do get in touch. I think Alan's going to share a very quick feedback form. If you need a conversation, we're here. It's free. We are unbiased. We can give you advice about your challenges. And just on screen, as well as on our website, we've got all of our upcoming events and webinars, which will cover more topics like actually getting traction with your stakeholders, as well as more themes using AI. And we do have a lunch and learn, which is a 30-minute lunchtime session coming up in April.
Right. And if
So,
we can just ask people to indulge us, give us 30 seconds on how you found today's webinar. And then there's the option, if you would like to talk to us about any of this and in relation to your own project, please let us know.
yes, thank you very much for your time today. We really always appreciate the feedback and we use it to inform our future sessions. And genuinely, if someone's out there with a real dilemma or does need support, we are available. So thank you for joining today. Thank you for staying the extra time. Hope it was valuable. Please do join us on the next webinar.